Hello and welcome to our video series entitled Student Collab Memory Secrets. So before I give any sort of introduction to this, I want to ask you the question. Have you ever, before a test or for an exam, had to memorize a long list of facts or items? Yes? And do you agree that doing that actually takes quite a while? It's quite tricky to remember a list and be able to recall it and produce it parrot fashion. So in this video series, we're going to show you exactly how to do that. By the end of it, you should be able to easily memorize lists of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 items or 50 facts without any difficulty. And you can then use this and apply this in your studies to help you achieve and help you to be able to list all of those long lists that have been bothering you throughout your studies. So we're going to start off here with a little introduction. What if I asked you to remember 5 items? And I'm just going to list a couple here off the top of my head. 5 items. Cat, dog, scissors, torch, paper. You know what? Let's make it 10 items. Cat, dog, scissors, torch, paper, battery, flash drive, then we can have cell phone, okay, how many do we have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 2 more. I'm going to put television, and let's go with deodorants. Okay, so there we have a list of 10 items. Now I'm going to pose this challenge to you. I'm going to give 1 minute for you to try and remember this list using whatever memory technique you usually use. And then we're going to stop the video and see if or how many items you could remember. Okay, so let's give you a minute here quickly. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video now, or rather not, let's not pause the video. I'm going to give you exactly 1 minute of silence to try and remember this list. Ready and go. Okay, you have 30 seconds remaining. Okay, and that's your minute up. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to pause the video, look away, and take a few seconds to try and write down the list without looking at the list that's shown on your screen right now. Write down the items that you tried to memorize and see how many of them you were able to memorize. Okay, and you can pause the video now and try to do that. Okay, how many items were you able to remember? If you've got more than 5, you've done quite well. Your memory techniques are quite good. If you managed to remember all 10, fantastic, well done. And even though you've managed to remember all 10, this course is still applicable to you because this was just 10 items. Can you imagine 50 items? You probably wouldn't be able to remember that offhand without using any sort of memory technique. Now, the technique a lot of people would have used for this is to maybe try repeating the list over and over in their head. That's a terrible technique because if you just take a few minutes and stop repeating the list, you're probably not going to remember most of it. So now I'm going to talk to you about the first technique, and it's the most basic memory technique. And that memory technique is called association. Whoa. Now, with the association technique, what you do is create a little story with the items that you have been given to memorize. And the idea is to make the images. So this story, you picture it in your mind. And the idea is to make these images as vivid as possible. And then later on, you can recall that story and play the story forwards in your head. And that'll help you to remember the items. So I'm going to walk you through just a little story. I'm going to create it right now off the top of my head. And I want you to picture the story vividly in your mind as we go along. And afterwards, we're going to try and recall these 10 items using this association technique. So, let's try my hand at drawing here. I want you to picture a cat fighting with a dog. That looks a little bit like a chicken, but I did try. It's a dog, I promise. Okay, so picture a cat fighting with a dog, and I want you guys to picture the blood spewing and the teeth showing and the dog's hair standing up and how it's attacking the cat, and maybe picture the cat clawing at the dog, right? So get that image vividly in your mind. Then maybe picture a kid running up to stop the fight, and this kid is carrying a scissors and torch. So we've got a kid, and this kid sees the dog and the cat fighting, and he's carrying a torch or a flashlight, okay, and he's also carrying scissors. Why would he be carrying scissors? Maybe it's to try and maybe he was chasing after the dog to try and trim the dog's fur, who knows. And the flashlight, probably because he's a kid and he was playing around. So now we've got a picture of a dog and a cat fighting, and a kid running towards them with a scissors and a torch to try and stop the fight. So you need to picture the dog and the cat fighting, the teeth showing, the barking, the hissing, and then picture this kid running, screaming at them to stop fighting with the scissors and the torch in his hands, and he's shining the torch on the animals and shouting at them, trying to get them to stop. And he's got that scissors in his hands, and you can maybe picture, these images have to be graphic, so maybe picture the kid slips and he cuts himself with the scissors. Okay, that's the kind of vivid imagery we're talking about. Next, the next item is paper. So let's say the dog and the cat, the kid gets the dog and cat to stop fighting, and the kid decides to sit down with them and have a little counseling session. So here you've got your kid sitting, playing counselor, and he's got a piece of paper in his hands where they are listing, the dog and cat are listing their grievances with each other, and the kid's busy writing down the grievances so that they can have a mature discussion about it. Okay? And the kid suggests that we use a battery-operated device in order to prevent the dog from barking at the cat. So maybe it's a battery-operated shock collar. Okay, so this is a shock collar. Let's see if I can draw a lightning bolt there. Okay, so the kid suggests after their therapy session that the dog be fitted with a shock collar in order to stop them from fighting. And the shock collar is, of course, battery operated. And this shock collar maybe plugs in, can take a USB flash drive which records all of the information. So for example, the USB flash drive maybe records how often the dog is barking and how many times he's been shocked. So the kid is just a kid, and he has he's decided on this method, but he thinks it would be wise to maybe just call his family and check if it's okay that he has fitted a shock collar to the dog. So now we've got the kid with his cell phone. It's an old school cell phone with an antenna, so it's not a smartphone. And he just decides to call his parents and discuss this with them to make sure that he's made the right decision here. So he's calling his parents. Okay? And then once he's made his phone call, he decides to sit down and watch some TV. Because he's bored, he's solved the problem, his parents agree with him, now he's bored, so he's going to sit down and watch some TV. So let's get a TV drawn in here. We're going to go with an old school TV. So he's watching some TV, sitting there comfortably. And as he sits down on the couch, he notices that there was a deodorant can lying there, and he sat on it, and it caused it to spray deodorant everywhere. Okay, so let's recap our story, and while I'm doing this, picture it vividly in your mind, and then we're going to see how many of those items we can recall. So at the beginning of the story, we've got a dog and a cat fighting. And remember to picture these images as vividly as possible. Make them graphic and gruesome. Okay, so we've got a dog and a cat fighting. You can see them barking, clawing at each other, teeth showing. Violent fight. And this little kid comes running, and he's got scissors in his hands because he wanted to trim the dog's hair, but the fight broke out. So the kid comes running, scissors in his hands, and it's nighttime, so he's got a torch and he's shining it on them. And eventually he breaks up the fight, and they sit down together and have a little counseling session, because in this world, dogs and cats can talk. So they sit down and have a little counseling session, and the kid writes down all of the problems the dog has with the cat and the cat has with the dog, and he writes it down on a piece of paper. Okay, and the conclusion that the kid reaches is that he's going to use a battery-operated shock collar, which can take a USB input to record information. So I want you to picture the kid running up with the scissors in hand and the torch shining it on them. Then picture him sitting down with the dog and the cat and writing down on a piece of paper the grievances of the two animals. And then he gets the bright idea that they will fit the dog with a shock collar, and you need to picture that shock collar. Picture the kid putting the shock collar on the dog's neck. picture him putting the batteries in, because the item we're trying to remember here is battery. So you picture him putting the battery into that shock collar, and then picture him plugging in a flash drive that can record the number of times that the dog has been shocked. So picture this bizarre image of the kid walking up to a dog wearing a battery operated shock collar and plugging the flash drive in, which then records all of the information that's necessary. And then I want you to picture after the kid has put the shock collar on the dog and plugged in the flash drive, he walks away, takes his cell phone out of the pocket and phones his parents, says, "Hi mom and dad, I've had this problem and we've sorted it out. I've decided to fit a shock collar on our dog, and is that okay with you guys?" So picture him on that cell phone, standing, pacing up and down. He's nervous because of what his parents might say, that he's put a shock collar on the dog. But in the end, they say it's okay, and he's all relieved. So he pops his cell phone back in his pocket, and he goes to sit down in front of the TV. And he switches on the TV, and you need to picture the show that comes on. Picture the cartoons that he's watching, probably Tom and Jerry or whatever it may be. So you need to picture that vividly. He walks into the lounge, switches on the TV. That's the item we're trying to remember. So make it, I don't know, a massive TV in your head, or something that really stands out. A big TV, the sound is loud. And then as he goes to sit down on the couch, he sits down on a deodorant bottle and sprays deodorant all over the room. And picture it fogging up the whole room, the deodorant. And he's coughing and whatever. And that's our story. So now that I've told you the story and you've been picturing this with your eyes closed, we're going to pause here, and you're going to run through the story in your head without looking at your computer screen. Don't look at this list over here. That would be cheating. Okay? So you're going to sit down, look away from your computer screen, run through this story in your head, and try write down the 10 items and see how many you remember. And I'm actually going to just give you a minute here. I'm going to start the timer, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this. Okay? And so grab your pen and paper. Get ready. Are you ready? Okay. 1 minute, starting now. Run through that story in your head. Thirty seconds remaining. Okay, time's up. You've had a minute. And how many of the items were you able to remember? I bet you remembered a lot more than the first time that we did this exercise. And that's because you used the association technique. So I'm going to end off the video soon, and I just want to do a little summary for you guys. So the association technique. My apologies. Okay, so a summary of the association technique. Okay, number 1, the method is to link. Items together as a story. Now, I don't want you to worry about how random these items are and whether they would logically link or not. the fact of the matter is, it's even better if the links are absurd, because it's the absurd things and the extraordinary things that stick in your mind. And that's exactly what we're going for here. So the second point is to be absurd. It doesn't matter if the story is absolutely ridiculous. I don't care if there's a giant ant busy eating a brick off the floor. You know, that's the kind of image that'll stick in your mind, and that's important. So be absurd. Make your story as ridiculous as possible, as long as it follows some sort of structure. So you need to have a little video that you can play in your head of images you've created, and that way you'll be able to remember things. The next point is to be graphic with your images. Okay? Now when I say be graphic, what I'm saying is, on top of make these images absurd, but make them explicit and graphic. So you want to picture explosions, and you want to picture the sounds and sights, and you want to exaggerate everything in your mind. So when that boy in our previous story sat down on the deodorant can, in reality, sure, the deodorant can might not even have sprayed anything, but in your story here, you want that the kid sits down on the deodorant can and it sprays deodorant all over the room, and he's choking and he's coughing because he can't see anything, because he's busy waving his hands in front of his eyes just to get the deodorant mist out of his eyes. Okay, that's how graphic you need to be. Or perhaps you could have pictured him sitting down on it and the can all of a sudden explodes and throws the kid into the sky. That's the kind of graphic imagery we're talking about. And you don't want to just picture images. You should be visualizing sounds as well, and smells and tastes. So when you're picturing that kid sitting down on that deodorant can and the deodorant sprays out, picture the taste of the deodorant in that kid's mouth. Picture the so think of the taste, think of the sound of it spraying and filling the room. That's the kind of graphic imagery that we're talking about. And if you do that, if you just create a story with the items, even if it's absurd, and the interactions between these items link together and are graphic, and I don't want to say gruesome, because they don't need to be gruesome, they just need to be graphic. You want vivid colors, loud sounds, you want to picture tastes, you want to picture smells, okay? And if you can do that, you're already leaps and bounds above the rest of students who will battle to remember a 5 or 10 point list for an exam. So yeah, with that, I'm going to bring this lesson to a close. So that is the end of part 1 of our memory secrets videos. In the next section, I'm going to be discussing an even more powerful memory technique that builds off of this association. And this is the technique that people use to memorize hundreds and hundreds of items easily. There are people who walk into a room and can remember the name of every single person that's in the room. And we're going to discuss that technique. And by the end of this video series, you will be a memory guru, or at least we will have given you the tools to become a memory guru and be able to easily remember those lists for your exams. And even if you can have a lot of fun with it, you can impress your friends with your memory skills. You can even make a quick buck by getting dares to remember a list of items, and then you can make some money on bets. So yeah, these memory techniques are really powerful, and as we go on, you're going to see more and more the value of it if you can't already. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the next the next part in our memory series. Thank you. Cheers.